stop there. So, right, it's a novelization of my experiences with Quentin Tarantino on the psychic frontier. Right? The pages that you hear me reading, right, is the pinnacle of the Rhapsody, right? Where he shuffled me out of town, all bullshit, right? All bullshit, under the delusion that Anastasia, that I wrote in an effort to help us reconcile, I wrote the band Fish to help us reconcile, right? Was interested in helping me play Hamlet with his daughter Eliza to play Ophelia. Right? Why the daughters? I don't know. I guess the only logical reason, right, is so that he could say, oh, look how insane he is. My daughter's a sweet little girl. And now, right, she's dirty, right? Her magnetic aura is dirty. That he's compounded a bunch of lies upon her, right? But it was just revealed in these pages, right? That Trey there's nothing involved with Trey, or it's all bullshit. Ha 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 ha, fuck you, right? That he feels hurt, right? But he did it to himself. That's what I have to say about it, right? That I wrote him twice between the time he canceled the film and Tribeca, right? And if he wanted something certain, right? Oh gosh, he was supposed to read between the lines. Right? Okay, sure. And he was supposed to take my letter. Right? He's not better than me. Money doesn't mean he's better than me. Right? He wanted to play the magic game. Like, that's the game that he wanted to play. I wrote him as soon as he canceled the film. And yeah, true, it was an acidic letter full of bile. Right? But now, we're gone. Right? We're both gone. And he's laughing his ass off, right? He don't give a fuck about me. He's paying people to watch me and torture me, right? While he makes the movie Critic with my intellectual property. Right? So, we're talking about it. Right? That's the point. This novel, this was like pushing into winter of last year. Right? That was like between Halloween and Thanksgiving. Right? That he pushed me out of LA. Right? And like, what the fuck does he care? Like, honestly, if he doesn't, like, so what? There's a guy on the street in LA. Right? Oh, so you got 5% of a heart. Is that? Right? And that's not true. That's not true. Because he stole my wisdom, right? And now he's descended into palpable black magic evil. And anyone who's interested in understanding that point that I made just there, they can watch my video, A Plea to the Pope, that I sent to the Holy Father in Rome. Right? That fucking William Morrison never knows about. Right? And so I suspect that everyone around him, right? Like if there's two schools here, right? Perhaps they're all saying it's time to reconcile. It's time to pull your head out of your ass. And then the other side of it is, well, better him than me. I expect you to watch that man forever because he'll fucking torture any of us. I don't want to torture people. I'm not an asshole. I'm not interested in psychic voyeurism. Right? That's sick. Right? Like, oh, he thinks these things are cool? Like, they're not cool. Right? And so what do I mean? I mean that space is aligned in a particular way. Right? There is a conscious field permeating all of space, every cubic centimeter, evenly distributed in terms of volumetric pressure. Commonly referred to as God or deity, right? The conscious field, right? Embedded within that, right, is an infinite complex of nested polyhedra, right? This is one example, right? Compound of 40 tetrahedra, right? And there's a myriad of examples behind you, right? And so when the divine Zephyr, right, the celestial Zephyr, breathes, pushes into the, right, subatomic structural manifold, right? It exerts pressure upon it and engenders collapse, right? And after it collapses for a time, it becomes this geometry that's in the center, which is known as the vector equilibrium, right? And then eventually, as it's collapsing, right, it is engendering friction against itself, right? Because a small volume is becoming a large volume, or a large volume is becoming a small volume. Right? That all of the structural components of here are being pushed there to the geometric center, right? And so eventually, all of this electric resistance becomes so great that it can no longer remain in inert space and erupts into incandescence as matter, as physical matter. First photons of light and chemical elements, atmospheric strata, mineral, vegetable, animal, man. Right? And so I invite you to look into the works of Walter Russell if you'd like to learn more about this. Right? But this is not my idea, but this is the philosophy of Platonic forms, that all things reside in the realm of idea. And so if mind, right, if the divine light of God exists within and around all of this and exerts a pressure upon it, the specific angle or angles, angels with which it exerts its pressure reflects what it materializes and manifests as physical matter in the material world. Right? That's like how it's done, right? That's nothing else has ever been occurring, right? And so, right, at the top of the evolutionary food chain, right, on a metaphysical level, right, on a spiritual level, is man, right? And so man, right, expresses his knowing through thinking, just like God does, right? And so the highest levels of said expression, that we call these people adepts, right? So Joseph Campbell teaches us, right, that the Kundalini, that those symbols, right, that there's psychological notions in the mind of man. And the Kundalini awakening is the raising of your psychological understanding out of your root, out of your base terrestrial nature, into the divinity of your mind, right? And so he says that it's a doubling back, right? That you go 1, 2, 3, then you go back to 2 to 4, back to 3 to 5, right? Back to 4 to 6, right? Back to 5 to 7, right? And so in that way, right? This is metaphored in our expressions of our thoughts by the fact that the notion itself derives from the brain but is expressed below through the mouth and the vocal cords. Right? And so the highest expressions of the adept meditating on God and the divinity, which is everywhere, right, sees the adept behaving like God. All instances of psychic phenomenon, right, clairvoyance, telepathy, psychokinesis, thaumaturgy, is the mind of the adept tapping into the non-local conscious field which resides in all of space. Quentin Tarantino is a powerful psychic clairvoyant who spends his time remote viewing and occupying the minds of the actor and actresses in his films. Right?